Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge, where you'll hear stories about people getting what they deserve. Guys, there's gonna be 3 stories in this one, so buckle up. The first story, you'll hear how OP gets back at his university classmates for picking on him. The second story, a principal and a teacher get nuked from orbit. And we'll finish off with a short story about a teacher's assistant who has OP in her crosshairs. Oof. I hope you stay for the stories today, and do hit that subscribe button for future revenge stories. Let's dive in. This happened a few years back in China, at one of the universities there. Here, I was studying the Chinese language, and I shared my language class with some people from France and Belgium. Our Chinese teacher was a really nice little lady that happened to also speak French. So often, whenever the French speakers had a question, they would ask it in French. Now, I didn't really mind it all that much, but at some point, it got to the point where about half of the questions in the class were asked in a language I did not understand. Obviously, that's detrimental to my own learning experience, since understanding the question is important for me to learn the language. So politely, I asked them if we could just do the class in English because about half of us did not understand what was being asked. Lao Shi, the teacher, was very nice about it, and afterwards asked the students if they could rephrase their question in English when they asked it in French. But apparently, the French and Belgian girls and guys did not take it so well. They were constantly glaring at me and whispering amongst themselves in French. I just shrugged it off and moved on. However, outside of class, they were always sticking together in their own little group, doing things together. At first, they would just walk past me when I was sitting down having a beer with my friends, and they would simply glare. But at some point, it came to them cursing, talking bad about me, and spitting on my lap when I was sitting in the park. Obviously, I was seething, so I might have called them a few words which were a bit too unsavory. Anyhow, they didn't take it too well. So the next day, I found out that they scribbled all sorts of things on my dorm room. Just nasty things. Obviously I was pissed, but I didn't know what to do, so I reported it to the International Students Office. The ISO was nice and understanding, but they told me they can't really do much unless I provide proof that something's happening. Thus, I went online and bought a little recording camera. After the university had painted my dorm room over, I hung the camera up in the corner of our corridor and pointed it at my door. Then I left and made sure to loop around a bit to walk past the group of French and Belgians so they knew I was leaving campus towards the metro station. I had some nice dumpling soup and a beer, and when I came back, lo and behold. Once again, they were hardly creative with their insults, but this time I had proof. I checked the video and was very pleased. 5 out of the 7 of the kids were actually there, and all wrote something on the door with permanent marker. They seemed to have a lot of fun doing it. Now, of course, the school was properly pissed when I showed them the video. Normally the students would just get a stern warning, but because the student office was aware that they were doing it before, and also found out the fact that they were harassing me all the time, they suggested the board to expel the students, as they had a zero tolerance for harassment of any student. And so they were. All this took place over the course of a couple of months, so we were nearing the end of the semester. The 5 students who scribbled at my door got expelled just before their exams, which meant that all the time they spent at the university was effectively worthless since they didn't receive any credits for it. But then, it gets even better. After this whole ordeal, I sent a neat anonymous letter in Chinese to the Public Security Bureau that the students had engaged in vandalism at the university. A few weeks later, after I'd returned home, I was told by a friend of mine who was on good terms with their group that some of them had booked tickets and hostels to travel in China by the end of the semester. However, their visa extension was denied by the Public Security Bureau on the basis of their misdemeanor at the university. I'm not sure if the second part was caused by my letter, or simply because the university informed the police, but I like to pretend that it was the former. So I was laughing my ass off as they slaved away half a year in courses for which they would receive no credit and had to cancel thousands of dollars worth of travel plans. That truly was a sweet, sweet feeling. And OP, it was a great pro-revenge as well. Imagine being so petty that you start to vandalize and pick on a student because they suggested you ask questions to a teacher in a language that everyone can understand. I bet a lot of you can't imagine that because you're wonderful and amazing people. I still can't get over the fact that they vandalized OP's door though. Like, what did they think was gonna happen? Get away scot-free? Oh my goodness. This happened almost 14 years ago. Also, this is gonna be a long one, so bear with me. I swear the result is worth it, at least to me. So, the beginning. It all started when I was 12 years old. My 7th grade teacher was infamous for being intimidating and, in my opinion, abusive to his students. He was the disciplinarian of the school, and he was also in charge of keeping track of detentions. We suspected at the time that the reason he never got fired was either because his students were too scared to report him, or because of the fact that the principal was his brother-in-law. So, the reasons why I hated him. He was constantly making vaguely racist remarks, complaining about the new South Africa, and constantly bringing up how his life was better during the apartheid regime, as he's a white guy who was raised on a farm. I always felt like he had an issue with me as a person because I'm a practicing Muslim. He would make the class laugh at how funny women looked with their heads wrapped up. His jokes about not eating bacon were endless. In fact, one day, he purposely stood in front of my desk eating a cheese and bacon panini. He used to often rant about how the school is no longer a pure Christian institution as it was back in the day. He would say these things and glance around either at me, my twin sister, or the black students in the class who practiced their own African religions. When it was his birthday, my mom encouraged me to buy him a gift. I spent my own pocket money, which was already limited, to buy him a big slab of chocolate. Throughout the day, he would get gifts from students in his class and others. He would get up from his desk to greet them and thank them, and then shake their hand. However, when I gave him my gift, all he did was look at me for like a second, look away, and nod his head slightly. I remember being thankful for not offering my hand out for him to shake because I thought he might have ignored it in front of the entire class. The experience that made me hate him the most happened before we wrote our 2nd or 3rd term exams. I was walking with my friend David back to class, and we took a shortcut between the English and kindergarten classes and saw a group of boys huddled together. One of them walked out towards us, and I saw that he had one of those camping multi-tools with a folding knife out, and instantly, I got a fright. He told us, "Give me your stuff before I cut your neck," and then started laughing and then walked back to his friends. It was clearly a joke, but David looked too close to tears, and I had a very bad fright because of what he'd done. I told the guy Xander that he's not allowed to have knives at school and that I'm gonna tell the teacher. We walked straight to our teacher, and when we spoke to him, David burst into tears. We told him what happened, and David was sobbing when he said that he thought he was gonna die. Our teacher barely looked up from his computer while we were speaking, and then asked for the guy's name. We told him the name, and he said he'll deal with it and for us to go out again. The next day, we saw Xander. We were basically making fun of him for getting into trouble with our teacher and likely getting expelled at worst, or sitting at Saturday's detention at best. He laughed back at us and said that our teacher just came to his class, asked to speak to him, and told him to never bring it to school again. No detention, no suspension, basically nothing. We were so upset that we went back to our teacher, and I told him that Xander said he did not get into trouble for having the knife. He gave me the ugliest look as if I was bothering him, and coldly said to me that maybe I should fix my coming to class late problem before I try to get other people in trouble. I would come to class late 4 to 5 times a month because my mom's car battery terminals were broken, so the battery would run flat and she couldn't afford to have it fixed. I felt betrayed by my teacher, the person who was supposed to make us feel safe while we were away from home. When I spoke to my friends about it, they told me that Xander was actually the principal's son, meaning he was my teacher's nephew. I decided to take the opportunity to speak to my friends about getting evidence that our teacher is treating students unfairly. 3 of my 4 closest friends had camera phones. I sat in the far left corner, my one friend sat in the opposite corner by the door, our other friend sat in the middle, and the last friend was right by the back of the class by the window on the left. We came to an agreement that whenever our teacher would sound like he was going to say something vaguely racist, that we would all discreetly take videos of him. Any private conversation we had with him was voice recorded on our phones. We caught him on camera telling a really racist joke and having a big laugh at it, and saying that Hindus must have a lot of problems since they have so many gods. We caught him saying a lot of bad things, but a lot slipped through our fingers because we weren't fast enough. It was extremely difficult to keep our friend group motivated to record him and not tell anybody else about it. After I think a month, we decided that we could not let it go any further. One of our friends was a black guy named Tatenda. Tatenda was a problem child. He especially got onto our teacher's nerves because not only was he colored, but because he would bring broken calculators from home and take them apart during class. One day, our teacher told him to clear his desk and throw away the bits of calculator. He ignored the teacher. The teacher then started to scream at him, and Tatenda did the only logical thing that a 12 or 13-year-old would do in such a situation. He mockingly put 2 pencils into his ears. Our teacher lost it. He grabbed Tatenda and threw him against the door. The narrow window pane cracked, and Tatenda's head was bleeding. I almost cried when my friend who sat way behind me said that he got the whole thing on camera. We didn't even trust that the whole class's testimony would get him in trouble. We decided that enough was enough. So the revenge. First, we showed the video to Tatenda's uncle, who showed it to his father. Then I showed my mom all the other videos and recordings, and she lost her mind. One of my friends sent it to his older sister, who had a Facebook account, and she posted it there and tagged the school and as many parents as she knew, and it blew up. Parents and people from around the province phoned the school, demanding answers to what's going to happen to the teacher. He was immediately suspended. There were rumors circulating that he had to go into hiding because Tatenda's uncles and his friends were hunting him down. The principal pulled Xander out of the school, and we never saw him again. We only saw our teacher once after he was suspended. He looked badly beaten up and was accompanied by a policeman and 2 other male teachers so he could gather the rest of his stuff from his class. But it didn't end there. Because so many kids needed the evidence that they were being bullied and nothing was done because of it, the CCTV footage was brought up. My friend's mother, who was a part of the school governing body at the time, told us a few years ago that when they reviewed the footage, it became apparent that the principal was having an affair with one of the grade 2 teachers. My mom's friend's sister, basically my aunt, sells Tupperware, and one of her regular customers and close friend is the principal's ex-wife. Not only did she leave him, but the house they lived in was in her name before marriage, so she effectively made him homeless because none of his family wanted to take him in. He ran into severe debt from staying at guest houses and burned many bridges from overstaying his welcome at friends. As for my teacher, his reputation was ruined. He served jail time, I don't know for how long, and eventually left the country because it seemed that everyone knew his face from the media attention he received. Guys, this is not just revenge, it's justice, and I'm glad OP took a stand. Him and his classmates likely saved many other future students from these awful, awful people as well. So props to you, OP. Okay, so in the 9th grade, I had one of my favorite teachers of all time teaching biology. He was known for his extremely long and difficult packets, but everyone loved him anyway. He was one of those people who can make any assignments or subject seem easy, because everyone was having too much fun to notice how much they were learning. His teacher's assistant, however, was another story. She had this internal power struggle going on 24/7, and she disliked me immediately when I first walked into the class. We'll call her Miss B. Anyway, I began to notice that Miss B lost a much higher percentage of the assignments I turned in than anyone else, except for a friend of mine who was also on her naughty list. I began writing the date on every single assignment I did, having the teacher sign it, and then scanning it into my computer. Miss B knew nothing about this, and instead of printing out my scan of an assignment when she lost it, I would just complete it and turn it in again, once again getting it signed and scanned. Side note, at lunch, Miss B was also supposed to be supervising kids, and instead, she completely ignored everyone else and blatantly followed me around, systematically adding each and every one of my hiding spots to the not allowed list. Anyway, the end of the year rolls around and the final packet looms ahead. It's the biggest and most difficult of the lot. It's also worth around 40% of the term's grade. Being very wary of teachers' assistants BS, I finished it and turned it in 2 weeks before it was due. And wouldn't you know, she lost it. This was repeated 7 times. I kid you not. True to my method, I redid it each time, and on the 7th time, the day the packet was actually due, I turned it in directly to the teacher and asked him to input the score manually, which he was nice enough to do for me. With my grades secure, I then went home, printed out a 6-inch pile of lost assignments, and brought them to the office the next day. I reported her, and when she was called down to the office to report, she was smug as hell, telling me to prove it then, trouble. That was her nickname for me. Her face when I pulled the mound of paper out of my backpack was the most priceless and satisfying thing I've ever seen. The grades were locked by then, so I was off the hook, and she was fired, eventually being reinstated, but under close supervision. Last week I revisited the school, where she's apparently still working. It's what sparked my memory, and I tried not to laugh when I walked into the biology room to catch up with the teacher, watching her face literally purple with rage from the corner of the room. And that, my friends, wraps up another episode of our /ProRevenge. Guys, if you missed the last episode, OP gets revenge on his jealous friend, who decides to take down OP's wife's career. Guys, check it out if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you.